The noon sun bore down heavy, baking the dirt street into cracked plates of dust. A young woman stumbled forward, her cheek bruised purple, her lip split and raw. Her stepfather's hand was still red from the last strike. He shoved her hard, and she fell to her knees in the grit, clutching a folded cloth to her chest like it was the last thread keeping her alive. "You shame me," the man spat, voice thick with whiskey and bile. "You shame this town. You shame yourself." She didn't cry. Not this time. Her voice was a whisper, but it cut sharper than his slap. "It was never mine." The words floated on the dry wind. She loosened her grip and the cloth slipped from her hands. It hit the dirt softly, but the sound seemed to echo like a gunshot. The stepfather sneered, turned his back, and strode away toward the saloon, boots striking the wood plank walk with drunken pride. The street had gone silent. Horses tethered nearby shifted uneasily, and a few townsfolk peered through shutters, unwilling to interfere. A lone rider halted his horse at the edge of the scene. The rancher, broad shoulders, hair silvered at the edges, eyes weathered by storms harsher than this. He swung down from the saddle, dust puffing beneath his boots. His gaze locked on the young woman, then on the cloth lying between them. He bent slowly, fingers brushing the fabric, and lifted it from the dirt. The weight of it struck him harder than any bullet. His breath caught in his chest. His hand trembled. The girl turned her face away, ashamed. "Don't look," she muttered, barely more than breath, but he already had. His jaw clenched, eyes burning with the kind of pain a man doesn't show often. Whatever truth was hidden in that cloth, it cut him deep. He straightened, holding it like a burden, and looked back at her. "You don't belong in the dirt," he said, voice low. Steady, her eyes flicked up to him, fear, shame, and the faintest spark of hope all tangled together. The rancher offered his hand. Behind him, the saloon doors creaked as the stepfather laughed into the afternoon haze. The dust carried that laughter away, but it didn't drown the silence between rancher and girl, and in that silence, something shifted. A beginning, born out of brokenness. The canyon wind cut sharp against her skin, carrying the scent of sage and dust. She lay sprawled on the parched earth, wrists raw where rough rope had bitten into them. The sun was a merciless overseer, burning her back as she tried to crawl toward shade that didn't exist. Her stepfather's laughter still echoed in her head, drunk and cruel, a sound that made the canyon itself feel like it was closing in. She tried to rise, but her legs wobbled, betrayal weighing heavier than hunger. Every muscle screamed, every heartbeat a drum of warning. She was left for dead, abandoned in the wilderness with nothing but the bitter memory of his grip. Vultures wheeled above, shadows stretching like fingers across the cracked ground. Her mind drifted, remembering the barn, the darkness, the slaps, the cruel words. "No one will ever want you. You belong to me." But she had survived before, and something stubborn inside whispered that she could survive again. Far over the ridge, a horse's hoofbeat struck the quiet. A shadow moved against the rock, steady, deliberate. The rancher. He had tracked her, following faint prints in the dust, following the invisible trail of fear and desperation. "Hey," his voice called, low but carrying over the wind. She lifted her head, eyes squinting against the sun, and spotted him. Relief and disbelief collided. "Please, help me," she croaked. He reached her quickly, hands gentle yet strong. He cut the rope with a sharp knife, brushing the dirt from her wrists as if erasing the marks of cruelty. The cloth she still clutched fluttered in the canyon wind, a flag of her suffering and resilience. "You'll be safe," the rancher said, his voice steady, eyes scanning the ridges as if the canyon might spit out another danger at any moment. "I won't let him touch you again." She managed a shaky nod, tears streaking her dusty face. The fear lingered, but the first seeds of hope had taken root. He helped her to her feet. The canyon was vast, but his presence made it feel navigable. Each step toward his horse was a defiance of the cruelty that had tried to bury her. As they rode back toward the distant horizon, the sun dipped lower, painting the rocks gold and blood red. The wind carried away the echoes of her torment, leaving only the steady rhythm of hooves against stone. And somewhere in that desolate beauty, the promise of shelter, warmth, and justice waited. The nightmare was not over, but for the first time, she was no longer alone. The cabin sat at the edge of the mesa, logs darkened by years of sun and smoke, chimney coughing thin streams of gray into the evening sky. Lanterns flickered inside, casting warm halos on rough-hewn walls. The rancher pushed the door open, the creak echoing like a warning, and maybe a promise. She stepped inside, hesitant, body trembling from exhaustion and the desert sun. The air smelled of wood smoke and old leather, comforting in its simplicity. He guided her to a chair by the fireplace, helping her lower herself gently. The cloth she still clutched trembled in her hands, a fragile token of the life that had tried to crush her. He set it on the table, smoothing it flat. By lantern light, the stains told a story of fear, abuse, and betrayal. His jaw tightened. The rancher had seen many wrongs in his life, but this made his blood run cold. "You don't deserve this," he said quietly, voice rough from years of hard work and harder truths. "No soul deserves what he did to you." Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she turned away, ashamed. "It's nothing," she whispered. "It was never mine anyway." He knelt beside her, hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "It is yours now," he said. "This cabin, this land, this moment, they're yours, and I won't let anyone take them from you." Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, a reminder that danger still prowled beyond the mesa. The sun sank lower, painting the horizon in streaks of crimson and gold. The rancher stoked the fireplace, the flames dancing against their faces, mirroring the fragile spark of hope in her chest. They shared a meal in silence, bread, cheese, and a little cured meat he had stashed away. It wasn't much, but it tasted like safety. Each bite was a defiance of the cruelty she had endured, a small reclamation of life. At night, she lay on the cot he'd prepared, the cloth folded carefully beside her. The rancher settled into a chair by the door, rifle within reach, eyes scanning the horizon even as his body relaxed. He didn't speak, but his presence was protection enough. For the first time in days, her breathing slowed. The cabin smelled of fire, wood, and possibility. Outside, the wind carried the faint call of distant coyotes. But inside, the world had contracted to a simple, sacred truth. She was no longer alone, and for the first time, she had a place to begin again. The night stretched on, heavy but safe, and the rancher's steady vigil promised that dawn, no matter how brutal, would bring light and not fear. The first stars had just pierced the twilight when the sound of hoofbeats stirred the quiet. She had been watching the flicker of the fireplace, trying to count the cracks in the logs to calm her racing heart, when a shadow fell across the cabin door. The stepfather had returned. His boots struck the wooden porch with deliberate menace. Two friends staggered behind him, bottles in hand, laughter slurred and hollow. The girl shrank back, clutching the cloth to her chest, nails digging into the fabric like it could keep her safe. "She's mine," the stepfather barked, voice raw, fueled by drink and fury. "Hand her over, old man. She belongs to me." The rancher stepped onto the porch, lantern light catching the lines of his face. His grip on the rifle was firm but measured, a calm that belied the storm in his chest. "Not tonight. Not ever again," he said, his voice steady, carrying over the wind. The men laughed, bottles glinting in the moonlight. One swung a fist, but the rancher's stance was unyielding, a living wall of defiance. "You'll find no easy prey here," he warned. The canyon echoed with their snarls, the quiet of the mesa shattered by threats and anger. The girl's hands trembled, but she stayed behind him, shielded by the solid presence of the man who had saved her from the desert. She could feel the tension in the air, the weight of every step, every word. Her heart pounded, a wild drum that matched the hoofbeats outside the cabin. "You think you can hide her from me?" The stepfather sneered. "She's mine, always will be." "She belongs to no one who would hurt her," the rancher replied, voice low, controlled, carrying an authority that even the men couldn't ignore. "Leave now, or you'll regret it." The wind shifted, rattling shutters and carrying the faint howl of coyotes across the mesa. The stepfather glared, spit flying from his teeth. He weighed his options, saw the unwavering resolve in the rancher's eyes, and for now he backed away. The threat lingered like smoke, a warning that he would return. As the hoofbeats faded into the night, the girl exhaled, a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The rancher lowered his rifle, letting the firelight warm his hands. He glanced at her, eyes softening. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "But for tonight, you're safe." Outside, the mesa was dark and silent again, but the embers in the fireplace glowed brighter, a promise that even in the shadow of danger, there was shelter, and hope could burn steady. Dawn broke over the mesa, painting the horizon in streaks of gold and burnt orange. The cabin was quiet, save for the crackle of the fireplace and the soft shifting of the girl as she tried to wake from a restless sleep. The rancher saddled his horse outside, the leather creaking under his hands, dust rising in small clouds around him. "We need to ride into town," he said, voice low but firm. "The law has to know what's coming." She nodded silently, still clutching the cloth, now folded carefully in her lap. Fear lingered in her eyes, but the edge of resolve was sharpening. She had survived the desert, the canyon, and the stepfather's cruelty. She could face the town's dusty streets. The ride into town was tense. The sun burned down, glinting off spurs and metal, horses' hooves kicking up clouds of dust that hung in the hot morning air. Every shadow seemed like a threat. Every passerby's glance a potential danger. Yet the rancher rode with quiet authority, a protector in a world that had shown her so much betrayal. They reached the sheriff's office, a small wooden building with a swinging sign and barred windows. Inside, the sheriff, a grizzled man with deep-set eyes, looked up from his desk. The rancher laid out the situation quickly: the stepfather's history of violence, gambling debts, drunken fights, and the abuse of the girl. The sheriff listened, nodding slowly, the weight of experience etched on his face. "He's a rotten man," he said, voice gravelly. "But without proof, I can't touch him. The law is thin and men like him slip through the cracks." The rancher's jaw tightened. "I'll protect her," he said, voice steady. "Until the law can catch up, he won't touch her again." The sheriff leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Be careful. Men like him don't wait for justice. They burn it down before it reaches them." Outside, the town was coming alive, the clatter of wagon wheels, the murmur of townsfolk, the distant bark of a dog. The girl watched from behind the rancher, absorbing every word, every warning. The sheriff's caution hung over them like a cloud, but so did a promise that someone with authority knew, and that the darkness chasing her could be confronted. As they rode back to the ranch, the sun climbed higher, burning away the early shadows. The rancher's eyes scanned the horizon, alert, protective. And though danger still lurked beyond the mesa, the first real seed of hope had been planted. She was no longer alone, and now the law itself had acknowledged the threat. The girl exhaled, a breath mingled with fear and fragile relief. The desert had tested her, but for the first time, she felt the stirring of something stronger, the certainty that she might survive, and even reclaim her life. The night fell like a black velvet curtain, swallowing the mesa in shadow. The only light came from the cabin's lanterns, flickering weakly against the log walls and the dying embers in the fireplace. The girl sat close to the rancher, knees drawn to her chest, clutching the cloth as if it could shield her from the darkness outside. Suddenly, the quiet was shattered by the thunder of hooves. The wind carried the smell of smoke and the sharp tang of whiskey. Torches appeared on the horizon, bobbing like angry fireflies racing toward the ranch. The stepfather had returned, and he hadn't come alone. A gang of his men rode behind him, shouting, bottles and fists swinging in anticipation of chaos. The girl's breath caught. Her body froze, every muscle coiled in panic. "They're here," she whispered, voice trembling. The rancher stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, lantern swinging at his side. The light caught the lines of his face, hardened by years of storms and dust, eyes like steel. "Stay inside," he commanded, voice low but unwavering. "Don't make a sound." The gang reached the cabin, surrounding it, their torches casting flickering shadows across the rough wooden walls. They shouted insults, threats, and promises of violence, trying to intimidate, trying to break the fragile sanctuary of safety the rancher had built. Horses stamped, hooves kicking up dirt and dust, the sound of chaos rolling over the mesa. The rancher's finger tightened on the rifle trigger. His stance was unyielding, every ounce of his experience and courage radiating outward. The girl huddled inside, watching through the window, heart pounding, praying for the nightmare to end. A bottle smashed against the porch, splintering wood and sending shards into the dust. The gang pressed closer, flames from their torches dancing like demons along the walls. The stepfather's roar was louder than any storm she had endured. "She belongs to me." The rancher didn't answer with words. He let the firelight reveal his resolve, the rifle steady, and the first gunshot cracked through the night air. The cabin shook, the horse hooves stumbled, and the gang's confidence wavered. From inside, the girl felt a spark of courage ignite. The rancher's fight was her fight now, his stand her shield. The torches glared, the night trembled. But for the first time she realized that the darkness chasing her might not win. The first salvo of justice had been fired. And somewhere beyond the mesa, the law, slow but inevitable, would follow.